I want you to pay close attention to these set of clips in the beginning of the episode. You'll probably be noticing, if you have a keen eye, that the city is a bit more alive compared to previous episodes of Nydal. There's a lot of movement, a lot of people going places. I mean, I also picked very specific clips, right, to show you how alive this is. But man, I've been sort of tweaking and doing some bug fixing in the background, and I'm gonna go in great detail about that in just a second. But before I do that, I want to sort of introduce what we're going to be working on in this episode, because it has kind of had nothing to do with what I did off camera, but I think it's also worth pointing out. Let's do a bit of a reverse before and after here. This park on top of the hill we worked on several episodes ago. I'm going to include a link in the description to that episode if you want to watch it in case you've missed it, but it wasn't a great build. I wasn't super happy with it. I kind of mentioned that during that episode. I also got a lot of comments from you saying that you weren't super thrilled with how that one came out. I'm sure there's going to be a comment right now saying like, oh no, I loved it and you should have kept it, but it's gone now, too late. Yeah, this is what we're going to be working on in this episode. We're going to be redoing this whole area, and I think it came out great. Honestly, you're going to see it in the cinematics at the end, but I'm super thrilled, and I'm definitely not going to redo this again because I actually love how it came out. Anyways, let's go back to the topic at the beginning of the episode. What happened that suddenly Nydal is alive and just full of cars and people, and just everything is amazing? So here's the thing. This is something that's being pointed out by many of you throughout the course of several episodes, where you've kind of been commenting that Nydal has been kind of like dead in terms of, the movement that it had. And I usually like dismiss those comments because it's like, whatever, I don't have like a huge city. I mean, our population is in the 30,000, so it would make sense that it wouldn't have like massive traffic jams and just lots of people walking places, and we had a pretty good, public transportation network. So, I thought that the fact that we had that going, it kind of hid some of the behaviors from the game. But the reality is that specifically in the last two episodes, I've been having a lot of issues where buildings complain. Pretty much ever since I turned off the realistic population mod, and the city sort of like started blossoming with new citizens and things like that. The basically half of the buildings in the city were complaining that they didn't have enough goods to sell, and industries were complaining that they just couldn't get raw materials and things of that nature. So I sort of decided to look in great detail about it, and someone, I can't remember if it was in the comments of the previous video or in the Discord server, pointed out that I should probably look at the vehicle limit, because that's usually a symptom of not enough vehicles being able to spawn. And, obviously, if there's not enough vehicles able to spawn, they cannot deliver the goods to the different places, and so on and so forth. Just so you know, City Skylines has a bunch of hard-coded limits that I guess sort of keep it somewhat stable. Obviously, you can override most of those things with a combination of mods, which is what I've been doing pretty much all along. But, Nydal is still a relatively small city, even though it has a ton of added details like props and things like that. But we aren't hitting really any of these limits, at least not that I was aware of. But when I checked over the course of this weekend, I realized that we're hitting the vehicle limit, which is set to, I think, 16,000 or something like that. So I got this other mod that basically overrides that limit, and it's one of those mods that once you save your game with that mod enabled, it's like you have to use it kind of forever, and apparently it breaks if you disable it. So, I tried a whole bunch of different things before committing to that, because I obviously didn't want to break the save game at this stage in this project. But I enabled the mod, and suddenly the city started working again. All those problems that I was mentioning a second ago, like goods not being delivered and just massive floods of people coming into the city. The trains started spawning again. I stopped getting that weird glitch where the trams will have missing cars and things like that. So it's oh great, so this was clearly the problem. I was hitting the vehicle limit. So I started working on the episode and started recording it, and actually I think right at this stage, when I started queuing up new things, I realized that trams were not spawning. You literally can see it on the screen right now. I queued up a bunch of trams and they were not spawning. It's like, man. So I looked at the vehicle limit and suddenly, like, we had way more than, I mean, the game was allowed to spawn way more vehicles than needed, but I checked the depots and the depots were telling me that I had like thousands of trams spawn, but there was only like maybe 10, 20, 30 trams running at any given time in the lines that I set up. So it's like, wow, man, what's going on here? So my first guess, and well, it took me a while to arrive to this conclusion. And by the way, just mind you that every time I try one of these changes, I have to restart the game. And every time I restart the game, it's about a 30-minute load time. That's how long it takes to boot up the save game for Nydal, just so you know. So I did this about 10 times throughout the weekend, this last weekend. So it was definitely something that took some time. I actually had like a pile of books that I was reading in between save games, because like there's nothing I can do. Like literally, my computer is like dedicated to loading up this game, and I'll go do some cooking or do dishes or whatever, or read books while I was waiting for this to boot up. Anyways, point is, at some point I disabled the advanced vehicle options mod, which is an amazing mod that I think is by Samsam, the original creator of Move It. And basically that mod allows you to customize vehicles, as the name mentions. But basically, to put it in different terms, you can set maximum vehicle speeds for literally every single car that spawns in the city, or you can tell the game, hey, do not allow the game to spawn, like for example, the donut vans or the weird beetle, like hippie car, stuff like that. So I've been relying on that mod for years now because it's amazing. But I think there's some weird glitch, and I haven't checked this with anyone, so this is just my theory, but disabling that mod fixed literally everything. And when I checked the vehicle limit, we were only using like 3,000 vehicles, and the city was just like booming. So it wasn't necessarily related to me needing that extra vehicles mod, unfortunately. But at that point, I already built so much that now I have to keep it. But the point is that AVO, Advanced Vehicle Options, was just, I don't know, causing some of these glitches. And because at some point I turned it off for the vanilla trams because I didn't want to use them, but I think that, I don't know if that caused a glitch or the mod is so old that it's no longer compatible, so I'm not entirely sure which of those is true, but disabling it fixed a bunch of issues, so I disabled it completely. So you're gonna see a lot of ultra colorful cars and like the not so pretty donut vans and hot dog vans and things like that. Basically, one of the main things that I did in AVO was change the color of the cars for some, a color scheme that's a bit more realistic. So you're gonna see a lot of green, light blue cars, like all kinds of rainbowy color cars that are not necessarily best looking ones. But if I had to choose between realistic colors and actual cars driving in the city, I preferred the later. So that's what I went for. I might switch to a different version of AVO that I haven't had time to try, that apparently it's compatible with Industries. At least it was updated a bit more recently. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments if you had some experience with that. But point is, I disabled that, everything works, and now the city is just like, there's so many people everywhere. There's the trams are full, buses are full, cars, they're just all over the place, traffic jams in many areas that I had to like go back and like tweak lanes. I mean, what you see on this time lapse is just a fraction of the amount of work that I did off camera, because I wasn't even sure if those changes were gonna amount to anything, so I didn't record them. And also, it's not super fun just watching a time lapse of me tweaking lanes. So anyways, hopefully you will enjoy the cinematics a bit more from now on, because everything is just like amazing. Yeah, like the university, you're gonna see some clips from the university. It's just like people everywhere. It's awesome. I love it. It also, I don't know, just make me way more excited about working on this project. It's just, I don't know what it was, but like I was so used to seeing Nydal semi-empty that I just kind of, whenever I saw those comments like from many of you saying like, oh, it's kind of dead. Like, what's going on? I was just like, whatever. But seriously, holy crap. Anyways, why don't we talk about what I'm actually working on right now? So, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I wasn't super happy with how that park came out. It was kind of like a weird thing. I was trying to build like an old city, like a fortified area. But because we later on built the Citadel, I feel like we no longer needed that sort of thing, that kind of build. So I just went for like a regular park, like your average suburb sort of park that it's not like the most manicured thing in the world. It looks okay. It has some paths that sort of connect the different entry points into the park. I mean, it's a pretty large footprint sort of area. And I wanted to add some like sport type area. In this case, I'm just adding these this specific football field or soccer field, if you wanna call it that. And I also wanted to take advantage of the hill here. So you know how I always complain about the height differences and blah blah blah. In this case, it was great because in my mind, this field right here, it could be used as not just like a public, field that you can just go with your friends and play football, but also because it has kind of like, you can see how the terrain kind of slopes up on one of the sides, actually on two of the sides. I was thinking that this could be like a great place for like an open air sort of concert. Not arena, because it's definitely not an arena, but like a place for having bands or something like that, some kind of like public event that's for free and the like. So I figured, you know what, let's just sink the field to the ground, have it actually match the height of the tram depot that I put next door, and I'll probably talk about that in just a second. And I think it came out great. But to really sell the effect of that, I ended up adding some bleachers. You're gonna see them in a second. And I used procedural objects to get the exact same amount of bleachers that I wanted. So again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I thought that was the clip that was coming up, but it clearly wasn't. So let me talk about what I'm doing here. So I ended up using these box trimmed trees. I kind of used them before on the shoreline. And the main reason why I'm using them again is because I kind of wanted to sort of tie all these different green spaces in this island sort of together, so they look like they were, or they're being kept by the same sort of landscaping people or organization. I guess it's the city that's maintaining all this. But basically, when you see the cinematics at the end, there's like an aerial shot where you can see the whole island. You can see how it's just like all sort of coming together. So that was the idea. Let's try to integrate all these areas by using the same type of trees, and in this case, the boxy ones. And I use this asset in particular comes in different sizes. I'm using these super large ones behind the this football field, just to like, have like a kind of a visible barrier from the tram depot, which is kind of like an industrial building, so it doesn't make a ton of sense that that will be like super visible from like the bleachers sort of area. So I just use those super large trees, and I think they're great. And also, if they have concerts and things like that, I guess they would help dampening the sound to some degree. Over here, this is where I'm tinkering with procedural objects and just some of these walls to get the bleachers looking right, and kind of addressing the height differences as best as I can with a combination of network walls and the blah grass. I think this came out fantastically well, and the park is like very not symmetrical. It's like, oh, they had like this empty space and they kind of like took advantage of it. I really wanted this park to not be like a perfectly manicured thing. Like, I want it to be very imperfect. So you're gonna see like clusters of random bushes, some areas with large portions of grass, and one of the things that I think really sells the deal for me, or at least the effect for this type of park, is the basically the paths that people sort of carved on the grass, because the actual pathing that was laid out in cement doesn't go to every corner of the park where people, want to go, or at least the people want to take shortcuts through the grass. So they just carved paths on the floor. You're going to see that in just a second. I think that's coming up really, really quickly. Hopefully it does, because otherwise I'm getting ahead of myself again. I don't know. I've come back to this working on this like so many times that I don't usually remember in which order I did everything. But speaking of trams, I mentioned a second ago that I was going to talk about that. I did I put on an extra depot because we have a depot by the harbor where the giant IKEA is. We have a depot by the main train station. And now we have this one on this island, and because we have so many tram lines now, and I need to actually go back and like tweak them a little bit now that I rearranged sort of everything. We have this tram depot here that sort of offsets the spawning of these vehicles so that they're a bit more distributed. And at the same time, I added 2 extra lines on this island, that one line that goes clockwise and another one that goes counterclockwise. So that way we can serve this new island a little bit better, especially because we have this giant park now. And inside the park, I added a bunch of people park generator assets, which basically is an invisible park that just tells Sims to just go visit it, and they just hang around in this invisible spot. But if you put them in a bunch of different places, it basically gives a reason for people to go into your fake park. I could have sewn it with the park life thing. Actually, I think it's still sewn from like the last time I did it, but honestly, I don't bother too much with that. I do use the park life assets a lot. In fact, I've used them primarily for the gate, the entrance for this particular park that I'm working on right now. But I ended up converting almost all of these entrances to procedural objects as well, so that I didn't have to bother with, the pathing and like the leveling of everything. It's just much more easy to treat the gates as a prop than as an actual entrance. And just to, sprinkle a bit more reality into this park, I decided to add some like mini restaurants. In this case, this is just a old tram that's turned into whatever, I guess a hot dog kind of place. I don't know. Just adding, sprinkling a bunch of tables with umbrellas. I ended up changing that table and went for like a rounded design, mostly so that I can just like keep them unorganized. I feel like square tables, if you put them in this configuration, they don't look as nice. So I just decided to go for round tables and just sealing the deal with some umbrellas and that colorful awning on the front. And we also have this pop soda stand here. This is from Park Life as well. It's not a custom asset. So just again sprinkling some tables and in this case, because we have like a big intersection in between these two things, I decided to put a fountain. I actually ended up moving that fountain to a different place and putting a smaller one in that area. So you're gonna see it in the cinematics. Finally, I think this is like one of the last things I'm doing. I'm adding this gymnasium that is not really connected to the park. It kind of shares the same area, but because it had this like cement area in the back, I decided to add another sporting sort of facility. By facility, I mean a basketball court. It's as simple as that. Nothing too crazy. But this one is indeed on the park side of things. I just added that giant fence so that the ball just wouldn't fly out. Usually basketball courts are kind of fenced in, not always, but it's something that you see every once in a while. And because again, there's a height difference, instead of just terraforming or doing anything super weird, I decided to just add some stairs that add an extra level of detail, and I think that came out great. So pairing the basketball court with a couple benches, the basketball hoops, and just the final touches, me adding just a bunch of trees everywhere. For the most part, I wanted to keep this sparse. Like I didn't want to overwhelm it with trees. This is one of those parks that doesn't necessarily have a ton of shade. But here it is, the before and after, including a small clip on the initial park that we built. Hopefully you like this one as well. If you did, please consider giving this video a like right now. And if you're new to the channel and haven't already, please consider subscribing as well. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.